Let me give you just a quick thumbnail report. Some of you have asked, how did it go? I want to thank you for praying. We were in the midst of the Amazon jungle. Jaime and Lori Aceche are missionaries that we support. They've spoken with us 2 or 3 times, and probably this next year will be back. They're in Leticia. It's a city of about 70,000, way out in the jungle, right on a major bay or port of the Amazon. Literally 200 yards from Leticia, you cross a street into Tabatinga, Brazil, and across that bay or port, you enter Peru. And so you're right where 3 particular nations come together. When I arrived, I got on a boat and went about 45 minutes down the Amazon, and we came to a place called Ronda. And we disembarked, and there were these mud steps that had been raining from about here to the ceiling. And I was really grateful that they had driven these posts in with a pretty good wire, because I fell down a couple of times. It was just slick. But as we climbed up there and had a couple of porters that carried my bags, we made almost a 3-mile trek into the jungle. They had a place there called El Puente, God's place. And over the last 9 years, they've built dorms, cafeteria, a big meeting hall. And it's where they bring people from these 3 nations, and even a part of Bolivia where the Amazon comes into that nation. And they bring these indigenous leaders in that are going to villages that have never heard the name of Jesus. And so we had about 220 pastors and wives and key leaders, and I was a part of a team of 3. And the man that was translating for me was actually from Bolivia. He is a medical doctor named Felipe, and he spoke English probably better than I do. And so it was really quite delightful to have that kind of help. So we were training them in a number of things that would strengthen their walk with the Lord and their marriages. And one particular evening, they asked me to speak on healing. And I was talking about how that sometimes God uses gifts of healing as open doors. In 1 Corinthians 16 and verse 9, Paul said this: "There is a wide door for effective ministry that is opened for me, and there are many adversaries." And so I was just talking about different ways that God opens doors, and sometimes he'll use the gift of healing. And so in the process of that, I was talking about miraculous healing, process healing, where sometimes they would pray for people and they would get better, and in a short amount of time, Jesus healed many sick people by casting out demons and releasing them from oppression. You see Dr. Luke at times in Acts and things that perhaps, and just the practice of healing and health. It's one thing that I've learned in my own life: if you abuse your body and you don't walk in some of the practice that God has for you, and whenever you get in trouble, you always want a miracle. What I experienced once was grace, and then after that, the Lord saying to me, "I want you to walk in obedience." So I was just teaching about this, and in the process, some words of knowledge began to come, and so I began to demonstrate. And it was exciting. One of the words of knowledge I had, it was probably about, Danny, where you're sitting in this group of about 220 or 30 people. And I said, there's a lady over here. You have a lump in your breast you discovered 2 weeks ago, and you have a lymph node. That's why I'm glad I had this doctor translating. Under your arm, and it's purple, and it's blue, and it's swollen about the size of the end of your thumb, and your concern is it's cancer. She stood up immediately. And we simply proclaimed in the name of Jesus a healing miracle. And so this was in the evening service, and the next morning she came back and she stood and gave testimony. And she said the lump is gone, and she lifted her arm, and where that lymph node was so swollen, it was flat and just a light pink color. Now what was exciting was not only the healing miracle that Jesus did, but she brought an 18-year-old son with her that was not born again. And because he saw the power of God and the compassion that God had for his mother, he received Christ. And so it was just really fun. I've got a number of the stories that I could tell you, but you get the gist. One of the things that was really kind of fun, I was talking about open doors for ministry, and there was a man there named Edwin, and 7 years previous, I was in a place in Colombia called Pareda. And he was in a meeting, and I prophesied over him, and he came up to me and he said, "I'm Edwin, do you remember me?" And I vaguely did. He said, "Do you remember the prophecy that you gave me?" So you got to understand that sometimes in the course of 7 years, maybe I've prophesied over several hundred people. And I had to say to him, "Edwin, I'm really sorry, I don't remember." But the picture I gave him was that he had on a suit jacket and a tie, but he had on running pants and tennis shoes. And I said, prepare to run. This is just what he was telling me, because God's going to give you a strong, believing wife. He was single at the time. And you guys are going to be running to these villages that haven't heard the gospel of Jesus. And God is going to use you to plant churches and to reach these unreached villages. And I said, well, that's an amazing word from the Lord. I said, I'm sorry I'd forgotten, that, but tell me how it's going. He said, well, I want you to know that this is my wife. A year later, I met her and we married. And he said, and then in the last 4 years, we've been to 4 villages and planted 4 churches. And so it was exciting to see what's happening. In the first 25 years in Jaime and Lori's ministry, they and those that they have trained planted about 500 churches in these nations in the Amazon. And their goal is to, in the next 10 years, plant 500 more in these unreached villages. But Edwin told a story that I thought you would really appreciate, and a couple of things, and then I want to open the word with you. He said, I went into one of these villages, and I said, I want to talk to the chief, because that's what you do. You go to those that are in authority, and you ask permission, can I talk to the chief? And so the chief came out, and he said to him, first question, he didn't say, hi, what's your name, any of that. His first question is, what animals have you killed? So it caught him off guard. He said, well, I've killed chickens and pigs. And the chief laughed at him, and he said, man, you just a boy. Okay, so he's about 5, 10, or 11, pretty stocky. He's probably 32 years old, but at the time, maybe 30. And he said, I was a little taken back, and I said, I didn't know exactly what to do. So I went kind of to the edge of the village, and I sat down, and I just began to pray, Lord, how do I reach these people with the gospel? The chief's son came to him. It was in the afternoon, and he said, be ready at 11 p.m. tonight. I'm coming to get you. And he said, I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but he said, I wasn't sure I liked where this was going. So 11 p.m., this chief's son comes with these 2 javelins. They have rope on them. And they get into one of those wooden kind of bigger canoes, and out in the Amazon they went, and they went caiman hunting. Caiman is an alligator, okay? And so here they are with one little light, and they find the eyes of this alligator, and they're heaving these javelins. And he said, the first couple times we missed, but the third time I hit one through the eye, and he speared one in the side, and he said it stunned him, but it didn't kill him, so we're pulling him in, and we're tying him to the side of the boat. And he said, and as he's waking up and we're going back to land, he said, we're just rocking all over the place, and I'm kind of freaking out. I thought, I'd be doing more than that, But they got to the shore and dragged this gator up, and they killed it. And the next morning, the alligator's laying in the village, and the chief comes out, and he says, who killed this caiman? And Edwin said, I did. He said, you no longer boy, you man. What do you have to say to me? Okay. And so what it created was an open door for the gospel. And cultures around the world are so interesting because, we would never kill an alligator to be able to talk to somebody in Pea Ridge, okay? But that's what God used there. But this is what was really cool. So he came the next day. He lived on the base there. And he had on this necklace that had about 60 alligator teeth, this big necklace with these teeth. And he gave testimony. He said, last night, Tony preached on open doors for the gospel. He told his story, and the people just loved it. They understood. And he wore this necklace, and this is what he said. He said, just as people have credentials to be a physician, or these men that are here teaching us have credentials of training and experience, he said, the Lord said to me as I go to these unreached villages, these are your credentials. This necklace of alligator teeth. And he said, and it's interesting because as I enter a village wearing this, they receive me. So pretty interesting just to see the ways that God works. He has such a heart to reach people with the gospel. So it was quite interesting as we made that almost 3-mile hike through the Amazon. About halfway there, we came to this village called Ronda. It was the name of this little peninsula. And as we were walking through the village on that Tuesday afternoon, it was raining, but as we walked through, I heard people yelling at us and hissing and doing different things. We just kept walking, and I said to the 2 men that were kind of my escorts, my guys, I said, what's going on? And one of them spoke English. He said, don't worry about it. I'm thinking, okay. So at the end of the meeting on Saturday morning, I had to get up early, and we had to hike 3 miles back through the jungle. And when we came to Rhonda, there were 4 council members and a police officer that blocked the path. And they said, "You cannot pass." And so one of the guides that was escorting me was about 6'2", and his name was Obed. He was a black man, very strong, well-built. And yet they said to him, "If you come through the village, we'll hit you." And so I'm asking this other man, what are they saying? And I said, "Ooh." And so they chose not to put up a fight. What I understand is this, that the indigenous people, that's who they were, make up their own laws. They don't have to follow the laws of Colombia or Peru, whatever. They make up their own laws. In that village, there was a woman. She's the mayor. She is a shaman or the witch doctor. She has tremendous influence over the Catholic Church with so much intermixture of paganism. She controls the school and government money. And last but not least, she hates evangelicals. She hates people who preach the gospel. And so they are really praying for her salvation. They're praying for her removal. But we realized that that was not the path. So they said to me, "We have to go back a quarter of a mile, and we'll have to go 2 miles through the jungle," and they pulled out their machetes. Okay, now look. My wife and I and Joe, I walk 5 or 6 days a week, about 2.5 to 3 miles. But 66 years old, walking through a wet jungle, climbing over trees with machetes was not in my purview. That was not exactly why I went. But we made it around without any trouble. That's the only time I've ever done that in my life. And we got to the particular dock about 5 minutes before the boat left. That was important because I had to ride back, change out of muddy pants and these muddy boots. I had a garbage sack to put them in and put them in my luggage, and then catch a tut-tut or catch a little taxi to the airport to catch my flight to Bogota. And so it was interesting, trusting the Lord in the midst of that. But thank you for praying, because I know God protected us. Okay? But what I chuckle at is the gospel's going forth, but there are people there, they're worshiping animal spirits, they're worshiping ancestral spirits and demons, and they're trying everything they can to stop the gospel, but they're losing because the gospel's going forth. And so thanks for praying, and I'm so glad to be here safe and sound and healthy. Appreciate you very much.